Hey folks, my name's René Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored.
This is René Enriquez. Nickname Boots. Blackhand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Welcome back, folks. We got another episode of the Making of the Black Hand. I have another video segment here I want to break down for you. And we're going to pick up right where we left off. We left off with Richard Valdemar interviewing me and Chris Blatchford in the room as well. This is the process. Again, if you guys haven't seen any other episodes of this is how the Black Hand, the book that Chris and I collaborated on, formed. This is the interview process. That was this video, a couple hundred hours of phone calls, written notes as we fleshed out the manuscript. But this is the genesis. This is how it started. This is how the Black Hand started. Chris would extract segments of this, have it transcribed, and he would put it in place, and then the book started gelling from this. So I'm going to start this now, and I'll stop it with some commentary and thoughts about what I'm saying here. Here we go.
Social anthropologists and psychologists and sociologists say that almost all gang members are born with some kind of learning disability, and they come from underprivileged homes and broken families. And
I guess that if we reflect back to that and you look at my academic record from school, I didn't participate because I thought it wasn't cool. I could have did anything that I wanted to. I never had a problem doing it. Of course, I guess at some point that I didn't apply myself, so I didn't know it. So I was ignorant of the facts of some of the things normal kids should know. But learning has never been a problem for me. I've involved myself in college, and I'm well read, and I have a pretty good education.
When did the gang thing start? How old were you?
About 12 years old. I seen my brother.
Where were you living then?
In Cerritos, California. I seen my brother involved in gangs. He started hanging around these guys, and these guys were charismatic.
Older brother.
The guy that just asked about when I got involved, that's Chris Blatchford's voice. The first voice was Richard Valdemar, so you get some a barometer as to who's speaking.
My older brother, Mark, yeah. These guys are charismatic. I had never been exposed to the gang life or the gang subculture. I see my brother dressing in the
I want to stop this right here because Richard Valdemar hit on it right with the opening question. Like most anthropologists and social psychologists and sociologists say that somebody that comes from a broken home, and that's the genesis of antisocial behavior, right? And me, I'm masking it, right? This is kind of BS right here, right? When I answer, no, I came from a great home, and I was just masking the fact that I came from a dysfunctional home. To me, it was like shaming the family to bring out all the adversities that I went through as a kid, right? And I hadn't yet revealed that I had been subjected to sexual abuse as a kid. So this is me with the macho facade on, putting up a front, and not wanting to lose face because I thought it was emasculating to even mention something like that. So I'm glossing right over it, right? And you can see that here. It wasn't until decades later that I finally came to the realization through therapy and self-help that, hey, I had to address this issue, right?
garb and the attire of the cholo and the gang member, and I immediately wanted to gravitate towards that. I wanted to emulate my brother because my brother was my hero. And he still is, as a matter of fact. I have a lot of love for my older brother. And I wanted to be like him, but our father was just terribly opposed to anything like that. He looked like clowns with those big clothes, and he couldn't handle that. My father was against that. So we used to take our clothes and hide them in the garage when we went to school, and they'd put on our Pendletons halfway down the street. It's just the typical normal kid, doing what his father doesn't want him to do. My mother was pretty lax in terms of that disciplinary thing. As long as we're home and we're not in the streets, she's okay with it. But my dad was a disciplinarian. Comes from a traditional Mexican family, and he was just never familiarized himself with this drug gang culture thing. So it started at about 12, and we just gravitated towards drug use, gang violence. I was finally initiated into Artesia gang, and I got my nickname this way. I don't like my nickname. I never liked it. We started training at Montebello Youth Boxing. They call me Boxer, by the way. You guys already know that, but for the purpose of this tape. They call me Boxer, and we started training at Montebello Youth Boxing on Whittier Boulevard. This is when I was a kid, about 12 years old, and I was barely gravitating toward this gang life.
You know what's seeping through here? Arrogance. Arrogance is seeping through, right? There's still that arrogant me in there. You know, I had not been humbled yet. And I see it. It's repugnant to me right now. I'm looking at it like I used to be an asshole. You know, that was me. And I could get why people thought that because I was, right? You see that. But I'd have to say this, right? In order to be a member of the organization, the Mexican Mafia, you had to be arrogant. You couldn't go in and look at the ground and not look people in the face and not look them in the eye. You had to have the command presence, right? And part of that entailed some level of arrogance, right? You had to believe that you could demand the respect of certain individuals, and you couldn't not have some level of arrogance in you. So I'd say that, but I see it now. It's a little repugnant to me. And it's really, you know, I was thinking about that the other day. A viewer made a comment about where I'm at today, and it's hard to believe that this was my life. I know it was, you know, I know I did all those things. I know I did those horrible things. This and so much other stuff, right? But I look back at it where I'm at today, and it's hard to believe I'm looking at this like this was my life. At that point right here, I never anticipated getting out of prison. It was a dream. You know, everybody wants to get out. Everybody thinks there'll be a miracle. And, but this was just me freshly out of the mafia. Within 6 months, I'm down at Walnut Station in Walnut, California, after living all those years in the shoe, being a Mexican Mafia member. I didn't have that foresight, right? I didn't see the writing on the wall that you know, my defection would ultimately lead to my freedom. I didn't see that then. It was just still retaining some of that special status, that narcissistic streak in me. There was, I mean, obviously there was some narcissism. It exudes in my personality, right? And I saw that. Right here when I watched this clip. I saw that, and you know, I don't like it, right? I don't like it. But at this point in my life, I never thought I would get out of prison. It was just about having special status. That, you know, I was still special even though I dropped out. You know, here's the FBI task force guys, sheriff's department flying me around in a private plane and Learjet, and I still retain some level of status, right? Even as a dropout. And I see that. It's in my mentality. It's in my persona. I'm going to run the tape now. Let's see some more of this arrogant asshole here.
Lifestyle. And I think my brother and another guy, Junior from Compton, he told me, Boxer would be a good nickname for you. And I told him, yeah, that'll be a good nickname. So everybody said, yeah, he's Boxer now, he's Boxer. And it just stuck. It just, for the rest of my life, to this day, people call me Boxer. And I tell them, my name's René. Please don't call me Boxer. But it sticks. Some people still call me Boxer. Or they call me Caja, C-A-J-A, which means box, like a box. And that's how I became Boxer. From then I started participating in.
How old were you then?
Oh, about 12 or 13. Right after I got initiated into the gang. As a matter of fact, they initiated me. I didn't want to get into the gang. I was still a little square kid. Two of my brother's friends took me behind the liquor store, beat me up and made me cry. That's how much I didn't want to get involved in the gang.
It was actually a gas station. I think it was a Chevron or a Shell on, I think it's Studebaker or Bloomfield and South Street. And they dragged me behind there and beat me up. And the name is true. I hated that name. And everybody knows. If you knew me, even as a carnal, I would tell them, hey, call me René. And only people that don't know me call me Boxer, or cops. They call me Boxer, right? But I've never liked the name.
So they beat me up, and they told me, all right, you're all right. Don't cry. You're a tough guy. You're a homeboy now. Homeboys can't cry, so it's all right. I'm a homeboy then. And shortly thereafter, they named me Boxer, and we started gravitating towards more serious things in gang life. I mean, it's a natural progression. It's a natural path. You know, once you get in, you start participating in objectives to further the interest of the gang. You put in work for the neighborhood. You find out who the enemies are. And shortly thereafter, we started doing shootings at members of rival gangs like Norwalk and Weingarten. We were doing drive-bys before they were called drive-bys. We were doing them way back when it was fashionable to do that. We called it, we're going capping. That's what we called it. We're going capping. And we'd select an individual who we're going to try to target. We'd go by their house and we'd shoot at them. If we see them, or we shoot at anybody in the front yard, and we'd go zipping past in a car. So we did all these things.
I got to say, we did that a number of times. Myself and my buddy, Johnny Mancias. That was my childhood friend. Hope he's well. Peace to you, Johnny. And your family, Lorraine, your mother, everybody. Peace to you guys. God bless you. But we would go driving around Hawaiian Gardens and we'd find the rivals' houses and we'd shoot at them. And in retrospect, you'd look at it like, that's freaking cowardly. Shooting at people's homes. And shooting at people indiscriminately, it's cowardly, and it's repugnant. Again, this is the repugnant me. This is the repugnant me. That's part of who I was. It's part of what I did, and it's the absolute truth. I look at it now, and it just takes me aback. Like, gosh darn, what if somebody came by and shot at the house, and my grandkids were here, or the neighbors, and their grandkids were there, So, yeah, I look at it, and it kind of takes me back.
Then I went to juvenile hall, got out about 6 months for a robbery, and I just went on the path of a gang guy. And then I actually regressed from it for a while. I got into my stoner phase.
What age was that?
I was about 14, 15. I was in my stoner phase. So I was going through the hippie thing, smoking weed, taking LSD, the whole life experience of, going to Colorado River, partying with the bikers and the hippies, and going to all the rock concerts.
Believe it or not, that was serious phase for me. I've been to Cal Jam 2, Frampton, yes, all these concerts, these rock concerts, Foghat, ZZ Top. I seen all the rock groups, and I would go partying. I was a head, right? That's what they called us, heads, right, or stoners, right? And it was all the local stoner guys from Cerritos area, and we would just all go party, and we'd go to the river, we'd go have parties, we'd have kegger parties, and it was a blast. You think back to the time of the 60s, like free love, sex, and rock and roll and drugs. That's what it was in that era, right? It was just all about stoner chicks and partying, and I guess I was just finding my way as a kid, and I fit in there because it was all the misfits. It's kind of like all the homeboys for the white guys. All the misfits and all the people with issues, and we all hung out together. We gravitated towards each other, no matter where you're at culturally. Like-minded people will gravitate towards each other, right? You have those similarities, and I fit into that stoner group easily, Always had a good supply of substances, and if I didn't, they did, and we always had a good time. But it brings back those memories of the rock concerts, Cal Jam, Colorado River. Oh my God, those are such huge parties. And I remember waking up one time in the middle of La Mirada swap meet in the drive-in in the middle of the night in a lawn chair. And I wake up and there's a party raging around me. Don't know how I got there. Don't know who put me in the lawn chair. One of my buddies did, obviously. But I remember that distinctly, and that's how hard the partying was back in those days.
Frampton, yes, just going through the whole life experience of, from one spectrum to another, gang member to a hippie in a few short years. And then I gravitated back towards the gang life because we started using harder drugs. We always maintained communication with the homeboys because our house was a local hangout. Even when we were in the stoner phase, homeboys would come down, we'd get high in the garage, and it was like central for Artesia. Matter of fact, our house was targeted quite a few times for drive-by shootings because everybody knew it was a hangout for Artesia gang members.
What were you doing there, like smoking dope or what?
Smoking dope, using LSD, starting to gravitate towards more serious drugs, dabbling in cocaine, cannabinol, crystal, I think it was called at the time. Any type of drug. Whatever was fashionable at the time, we used it because that was the thing to do. I mean, everything was an experience. It was the drug experience at that time.
And where you were living was sort of a upper middle class
upper
area.
middle class area.
So you don't think of the tough cholos down there.
You don't think of tough cholos down there. I mean, it's not. The individuals from the tough cholos were coming from the other side of the tracks, from Artesia, from Lakewood. They come and they gravitate towards our house because we were like the only minority family in Cerritos besides another family. So it became the meeting point.
I remember this. We'd open up the garage door. We lived in Cerritos, California, on Stowers Street. Stowers and Artesia, like 4 houses from the corner. And I recall that we would just open up the garage, and we had all these proper neighbors, right? And it was predominantly white, a bedroom community. And all the homeboys would come there. We'd party till all hours of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and we'd be in the front yard, and we'd be drinking, and we'd be getting high, and none of the neighbors ever called the cops on us. Very few times did the cops come. They knew that we weren't going to bother them, right? We weren't going to mess with them, and we're pretty cool. We're pretty cool with the neighbors. I mean, I think there was some distaste on their part. I mean, who wants hoodlums, partying at all hours of the night in front of their house? I never thought about that then, that we were keeping the neighbors up and all that. But I remember this, like, it was a regular occurrence at my house, and my mom and dad really couldn't do it. We either left with the homeboys or we kicked it at the house. And they would prefer that we stayed at the house because they perceived that it was a safer place to be.
And Cerritos became actually a part of Artesia's turf because of us.
It was kind of safer there.
Well, it wasn't the safety aspect because some of the other members had girlfriends in the area, and they'd come to hang out at our house. Do you want me to continue?
Oh, wait, let me just turn this over.
How do you think it's going? All right?
Yeah. This thing's gonna run out too. So. No, great. When did you hit that point where, though, you knew you were really a gangster and you wanted to be a Mexican Mafia guy? I mean, or was that just a gradual thing, or sometime at 14 you went, hey, man, I want to be one of those guys?
I never aspired to be a mafioso.
No.
You see, that's the most contrary thing in my world is that I meet guys and they're young guys and they come into prison, they aspire, and they don't secretly come up to me because it's not supposed to be spoken. This is the most sacred thing in the organization. Nobody speaks about being a member. Nobody asks to be a member. It's the most sacred thing in the organization. As soon as somebody says that, you're disqualified from ever being considered. I mean, it's almost universal in members' minds. You don't go seeking it. And those people who go seeking it, they're automatically disqualified. So in my mind, I never aspired to be. I heard that my cousin was a Mexican Mafia member when I was about 15. His name was Ray. He was eventually killed by a Mexican Mafia member. Kiko from El Hoyo shot him. Shot him in the head. It was a really good cousin of mine, about 10 years older. Looked just like me. His name was Ray, and he went to prison for murder. And we had heard that he was involved in the Mexican Mafia. And he was actually a soldado, what we call a camarada. He would kill people for the organization. He did kill people for the organization while he was in prison in Tracy. He was a stand-up guy. By anybody's estimation, he was a good man and in the eyes of the organization, and he would have eventually been a member had that been the path he wanted to take. But he had opted not to participate.
So I'm talking about my cousin Ray. It was Turkey from Ochentas. I was so close with that guy. In fact, my father and his father owned a factory together, Resin Craft Decorating Industries. We used to work there together. We used to go partying on Fridays when we got paid. And I recall asking him one time, hey, tell me about the Mexican Mafia. Because I heard all these rumors about my cousin, that he put in work and, that he was a soldado. I didn't know all these things at the time. I just heard, he's hooked up with the Mexican Mafia. And he had the gangster look, right? Handsome, big old freaking mustache, like Chewy's mustache. He had a big old mustache. Not that big, but pretty big. He had all the prison ink. And he just had this charisma, right? And this allure. And I remember I started using Three Flowers hair grease because he used it, right? And I started smoking Camel non-filter cigarettes because he smoked Camel non-filter cigarettes, right? And unfortunately he was killed. He was killed by a guy named Kiko from El Hoyo, who wasn't a carnal at the time. He became a carnal later on down the line, but that's unfortunate that obviously that my cousin passed, and that's who I'm talking about there.
I mean, initiated, becoming a member. But even then, when I heard about that, I wasn't interested. I asked him about it once he got out of prison, because he was later released from prison. I told him, hey, tell me about the Mexican Mafia, Ray. He told me, you don't want to know about that, Renee. You just forget about that. And I forgot about it. Later on, I think it was about 17 years old, we were having a party at my house, and some of my homeboys were together, we were drinking beer. I think we were smoking marijuana in the garage or something like that. And one of the guys who was in Pelican Bay with me recently, Victor Reese, told me, at that age, we were about 16, 17, he says, you know, I heard that you have to get in the envoy or they'll kill you as soon as you get into prison. So that's the belief I thought. You know, I says, well, okay, well, I guess if I ever go to prison, I got to get in the envoy then, huh?
Actually, I remember the incident now. We're inside of a van. It's parked in my driveway, and we're all smoking weed, me and a few homeboys with Victor Reese, right? I heard that Victor passed away from cancer. In fact, he was one of the only innocent guys that I ever met in prison. Him and his brother, Victor and Hector Ruiz, a well-known family from Artesia. They were arrested for a murder that occurred in the 80s. And I recall seeing them when I went back to court for something. I came down from San Quentin. I saw them in court. They had hired an attorney and paid like $6,000 for him, the guy to represent them, which was a lot of money back then, particularly to the family. You know, they weren't a wealthy family. They were just struggling working folk, just like everybody else. But Victor and Hector hired an attorney, and the attorney guaranteed to get him off. Told them, hey, I'll get you off. Don't worry about it. And they knew they didn't do it. And I knew they didn't do it. In fact, I talked to the guy who did it. I'm not going to name him here, but I spoke to him on the streets, and he told me this was after all this incident. Let me tell you about this incident first. I'm jumping ahead. So I see him in court, and they says, hey, they offered us a deal of 5, 6, and 7. There were 3 people involved, right? Victor, Hector Ruiz, and another guy. And they said, we're not going to accept it. And I told them right then and there. I said, hey, brother, you got to take that deal, man. I says, this is a life sentence if you get convicted. They said, no, we paid $6,000, $7,000 for this attorney, and we're going to win it because we know we didn't do it. So I'm okay, good luck, man. I'd leave because it was a child custody thing. I was divorcing my first wife, and we were just finalizing the divorce actually. And I ended up going back to San Quentin, and years later, I see Victor Ruiz at DBI, and he's got a 17 life sentence, and he ended up dying in prison. I think it was him or Hector. I'm not sure which. I heard one of them passed away, but yeah, they did not do the murder. They weren't even on the scene. And I spoke to the guy years later, 1988, after I paroled. I talked to the guy who actually did the murder. It was in my neighborhood. I saw him, and we had a good discussion. And he says, you know what, Renee, I know they're doing life, but I'm not going to turn myself in, which is, that's part of the game, right? That's what they're not going to tell on you, so it is what it is. I suggested that he take care of him, but that never happened, I think he had his own issues with alcoholism or something. I don't know. And I'm not judging him or anything, but that's a little tidbit to that story right there. The guy that we were smoking weed with in the van, the guy that said that we had to join the mafia, that he heard that, and we're just kids at the time, right? He ended up dying in prison from cancer, and his brother is still in prison doing a life sentence. Innocent guys, completely innocent guys, and there's nothing that can be done about it now.
And I told him about that years later during the peace talks in 2000. We're making the rounds, and we're allowed to walk throughout Pelican Bay, which is historic in itself. Mexican Mafia members have free run of the prison, walking in every aspect of the prison, just walking around talking to individuals. I brought that up to him then. But later on in life, I go to prison. I go to prison for robberies in 1980, and I get in prison, and every guy with tattoos and a mustache, he's a mafioso. He's a mafioso. He's got to be a mafioso. Look at him. He looks like a tough guy. None of them were mafiosos. None of them. I found out differently. And even then, I didn't aspire to be a Mexican Mafia member. It was at the point when I was in San Quentin in 1982. We're at a place called North Block. They call it the Hotel California. I'm a mainline porter, like trustee type individual, who's functioning in there in the whole. This is a whole setting. This is a maximum security setting. I'm allowed to go in and out, so I become a runner for them. I'm transporting knives, selling narcotics, delivering messages. I'm like an envoy for these individuals. It's then that I start saying, wow, this is pretty cool. These guys are powerful. Everybody gives them stuff. And I met my first mafioso at that point. Well, I met Black Dan Barella back in Soledad in 1981. That's the first mafioso I met. But I really become intimate with these guys in 1982 in San Quentin. I met Benjamin Peters. I met Fat George.
Benjamin Peters. The guy's about all of 4'11", and you ever see the Felix the Cat, the cartoon, and there's this guy named Baboom. He would go Baboom, and he'd knock down dams and walls and buildings, right? Big old voice, right? A little tiny guy, Baboom. That was Benjamin Peters, because I would hear this guy's voice. I was on North Block AC side on the first tier where all the porters lived, all the tier 10. They used to be called tier 10ers. And I would hear this guy's voice from the fifth tier yard side, which is the complete other side of the building. And these buildings are massive, right? These are the old prison cell blocks that you see in video and movies. Those are those cell blocks, right? And with all the noise of 500 individuals speaking and watching TV and bumping the radio and getting high, you could still hear Topo Peter's voice. So I heard him before I even met him. And then when I meet him, he's this diminutive little man, ugly little man, with a huge voice, right? Kind of a little man's complex, right? And, hey, little brother. That's how he used to call us, right? Whoever, that he wanted something from. Hey, little brother. And then when he called me that the first time, when I first met him, I was like, oh, man. He called me little brother. So it's kind of like, made me feel good, right? There's one of these titans was calling me that. And yeah, it was there that I met like all the AB guys in San Quentin, like David Chance, John Turflinger. I think it's John. I'm thinking of John Stinson. I didn't meet John Stinson to the county jail. I met all these guys, right? Art Rufo, all these guys. I met them all right there. And it was an experience for me. Like I was in the big house. This was the big house. This is Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood Central. In fact, in the block I was in, North Block, the fifth tier yard side had a little hand-painted Old English or German text by the bar. The bar is when they actually pull the bar to open cells, right? Old mechanism that runs across the top of the cell. It's a bar, and they have a handle at the end of the tier that they insert a key in to open it up. But right above that was written Hotel California. And it was there that I met all these guys. So while I was there, it was like, wow, this really is, the House of Dracula. This is the House of Dracula right here.
I met Sirius Steve Moreno. I met Oso. I met Ruben Barella. I met some of the AB members, John Stinson, Ricky Turflinger, and some of these heavy-duty guys.
Did they seek you out, or did you?
Yeah, I do all the running. They'll send a message, hey, they want you up on the fifth tier. So I go up to the fifth tier and they say, what's up? It says, take this guy, get this done, have this guy whacked. I'm the go-to guy.
And you're how old at this time?
21 years old. And I'm functioning with these biggies. And when I walk out of the yard, these guys respect me. Every one of these guys in the yard. Hey, don't mess with Boxer. He's with the big homies. He's a camarada. He's on his way. He's on his way. But even then I didn't inspire. I just liked this little position that I was in, this little position of favor that I was placed in, is just by associating with these individuals. I had benefited tremendously just by running for them. It was like I had bumped up in status, my social status. I elevated. I got a promotion in my job. So I'm handling these tasks, and I'm not even doing hits yet. I'm not even doing violent acts for them yet. I'm participating in them by gathering the knives and delivering messages to commit murders and do these specific things, but I'm not doing it myself yet. After that, I transferred to Tracy, California, DVI. And it's then, my first day on the yard, they walk up to me and they say, hey, you're a boxer, right? I says, yeah. I says, big homie wants you to do this hit right now. And I said, okay, let's go. Ooh.
Yeah, I remember that. First day on the yard. I was obviously I was known to the guys when I got there. They knew that I came from San Quentin. When I was on orientation, you get like a lockdown in yourself, like 10 days until you go to classification and clear for the yard. So, I met some of these guys and come to the door. Hey, where you from? And it was none of that checking your paperwork stuff. If I would have done that back in the day, you would got whacked. Let me see your paperwork. They knew who you were. They knew who you were, right? And and they come up and I remember I had the four little windows in the front of the cell in DBI, and I talked to a couple of guys, and they knew I came from San Quentin, that I was known to the Carnales, and the first day I go out to the yard, I'm walking out there, and I'm just cruising around, and Roy Boy Rivas, Roy Boy from San Diego, walks up to me. He says, "Hey, you're a boxer?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Hey, the Carnales want a favor," and I explained this right here, right? But it's the first hit that I had ever done. I had never done a prison hit before, and this is the first one that I had ever done. And years later, I find out that this angel from Santa Monica gets killed in the county jail as a result of this. Right? This wasn't part of the conspiracy. Right? He gets killed for a whole different well, because he's no good. But it's a Muskie from Flores and Gabby from Flores that do it. And I never even knew, and I was in the county jail with them all those years, right? That they end up killing this guy in the cell, and actually there's a viewer that brought out all this through messages and emails that were sent to me, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know that, how this reverberates and kind of like a pebble in the middle of a calm lake, and it just ripples out, right? And it goes on and on and on and on. So many people are impacted by it. And that's something you learn in victim awareness, right? But it's true. It's true that this incident went on years later, to have so much serious complications in somebody's life, right? And yeah, this is what we're describing here.
It was a guy named Angel from Santa Monica. Me and you did a piece on him in your news thing. Frank Martinez.
Yeah.
Me and Frank Martinez, Puppet.
Yeah.
We were not members. They said take Pancho with you. I said okay. No, Puppet. Take Puppet with you. I said okay. And I remember we call him Gorby because of his spot similar to Gorbachev, his birthmark. We call him Gorby. So I take Gorby with me, and I have a nice long rod, chrome. It's like a painting, those rollers. Mm-hmm. Well, it's just broken off again, sharpened to an ice pick point. And this guy Angel Hat from Santa Monica was playing handball, and Puppet tells me, he says, "I'm going to grab him and you stab him." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And so he grabs him. We walk up straight to the handball court in front of everybody, gunners and everybody. I just start stabbing him. Boom, boom, boom. And the reason I stopped is because the handle was a T-shirt. It slid all the way up. Because sooner or later I'm hitting the guy like this, and the handle's up here at the front. So we walk away. I give Pancho the knife, and the guy goes in and goes to the hospital. But that was my first hit. It was then that I knew I'm on the path. I'm being looked at, because then I'm included in specific activities. They want me to organize hits on the yard. We're running in a crew. It's a wrecking crew, kind of. We're the guys that are handling most of the business on the yards. If we're not doing it ourselves, we're getting other people.
This is when I really realized that, like, oh man, this is serious stuff, right? And I didn't hesitate when they asked me to do the hit. It was like, oh man, I got 2 more years to go home, or 3 more years to go home, and I'm not going to do this hit. And it's like, hell no, I'm representing the hood. And there were some homeboys there. Victor Ruiz, there was Michael Fernandez, Negro. There was another homeboy there too. I think Mosca. Mosca. Yeah, I remember Mosca had alopecia, and he had no eyebrows, so he wore this headband really low over his eyebrows. And I always asked him, "Why do you wear your headband so low?" It was then they told me he had alopecia, right? And there were a few of us there. And in fact, Daryl Baca was in the hole. Daryl Baca had done a hit against a white guy, right? And he was in the hole. So I mean, I had to represent the hood. Daryl represented the hood, so I'm going to represent the hood, right? There wasn't even a question in my mind when they says, "Will you do this hit?" I was going to do that hit, right? And the guys in the yard, we later became the wrecking crew, like Tablas Castellano, Tablas from Florencia, Top from El Rio, Roy Borribas, And all of us became carnales. All four of us, Topo from Florencia, Juan Garcia, all five of us became carnales, right? But there were a few other guys involved in that wrecking crew, and but we were the kind of like the main guys, right? We all ran together, right? And there were carnales actually on the main line with us at the time. There was first was Frankie Buelna from I think he was from Primera Flats. I don't know where the hell he was from. Merced he lived at, right? And he was a northern guy. He was from Primera Flats, I think. And then there was Manuel Luna, the Godfather from Ramona Gardens, and then later was Güero from Pasadena. And when I first got there was Kiko from Primera Flats and Gator from Florencia. Those are the first carnales. So the Mexican Mafia members were there with us, and we were their appendage. We encircled them. There wasn't no bodyguard stuff out there. There was no entourages. Carnales walked the yards freely. I mean, a carnal may ask you to walk with him. In fact, Güero Pasa asked me to walk with him one day when he confronted the TS. There were about 10 TS members up in the bleachers, and he went and chewed them out. He says, "Come stand with me." He said, "Put your hand in your pocket." And I said, "Why?" He says, "I want them to think you have a fierro." And I didn't. I didn't have a knife. And I was like, "Oh, shit. We're going to get slaughtered right now." But I went with him, and he started chewing them out. He asked him something. He asked one of the TS guys something, and the TS guy says, "Why you want to know?" And I remember Güero looked him dead in the face and said, "Yo quiero saber porque yo quiero saber." And the guy answered him. And then we walked away. He just told me, "You did good." But my tummy was quivering inside. You know when you get scared and your tummy quivers? I was quivering inside, man. Because here's all these TS gangsters, like 10 of them, and Güero from Pasa just faced them all down and had me there like a dummy with my hand in my pocket. Kind of like when you see the movies when people stick their finger in their jacket pocket and like a gun. I'm just standing there, you know? Crazy thought that just popped up right now when we talked about this, but I'm going to keep running the tape. I hope you guys like these little anecdotes because I didn't even think about them until I'm watching.
They delegated this authority to us. That's Frankie B. Frankie B. Buena, Rocky Luna, who was murdered, Mexican Mafia member, Zenon Grajeda, brother of the Grajedas, he's in federal prison, Mexican Mafia member, Güero from Pasadena, who's an ex-member, he was later assaulted in San Quentin. I'm functioning with these individuals in the yard. Frankie Mays, these are older, high-power Mexican Mafia members that I'm being included in these activities.
At San Quentin.
I had transferred to Tracy now.
Tracy, yeah.
School because it was there that you were learning how to do war. You're doing it
back in the day, right? Back in when the organization was actually founded, it was founded there from what about Flores and a couple other carnales, right? But they called it that, the Gladiator School, because you went there and you learned how to kill. You were going to pick up a knife. I mean, if you're about anything, you're picking up a knife, right? If you went there and you didn't do anything, then you weren't cut out for this life. But that's where my career actually started, I guess. You know, after that, it was like butter. You know, you just, hey, let's go whack this guy. Okay, let's go. You know, there was no, we can get away with it back in those times. We got away with it. You know, I got away with all the hits I did there. There was no 1030s or none of that stuff back then. You know, they weren't dropping kites like crazy. Like now, you could fart in the wrong direction, you're going to get a 1030, which is a confidential note, confidential memorandum. But they didn't have cameras. And in fact, when I did that first hit, actually I did another hit right under the gunner. I remember that. He chambered around the Ruger 223, a Mini 14, right? Stainless steel, nice rifle, right? Anybody who knows weapons knows that. But he chambers around and throws down on me, the gunner, when I hit this guy. And he tells me, "Get down!" And I took off running. I was gone. All the way across the yard. I took off my beanie, threw off my jacket, threw the knife, and actually got away. That's how crazy prison was then. And there were no lockdowns for investigation. They go, they pick up the body, they get the knife, and then they haul them away in the meat cart. In the meat wagon, they called it. A little gurney on wheels. They just run out, and you hear the keys jangling, and that was it. Those were hits back in the day. Unless it was a homicide. If it was a homicide, maybe we got locked down for the day. Next day, we're up. So that concludes this episode of the Making of the Black Hand. Hope you like the anecdotes, folks. Going to keep them coming. As they pop up in my head, I'll fill you in with details. All right. Stay safe. Peace out.
This is René Enriquez. Nickname Boots.